This is in Lekuti Sichot, Volume 1, in the book of Shmot, paragraph Yud Aleph. The Sof Parshatenu Ne'amar, in the end of our Parsha, it says, the end of our Torah reading, it says, Shemoshe Rabbeinu Shalat HaKodesh Baruch Hu, that God asked, that Moshe asked God a very powerful question. Lama harayota lamazeh. Why are you making the Jews suffer? You put them into Egypt. They've been suffering for so long. They didn't do anything wrong. Now in the end you said that they're going to get out. I went and told the Jews, that's it. The time has come, you're getting out. And things only got worse since then. Why are you doing this to the Jewish people? Good question. We can ask that question also now, after 2,000 years of suffering, Holocaust and pogroms. Al-Kach Yeshiva Kodesh Baruch Hu, God answered. He'll answer this next week. This is in the end of this week's portion. Moses asked the question, and the beginning of next week's Torah reading, God answers. Ani Hashem, I am God, and ve'ereb be'el Shaddai, and I appeared to the fathers in the name El Shaddai. Ushemi Hashem, but my name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Lo Nodati Lahem, I did not make known to them. Ve Yudatem Ki Ani Hashem. Now I'm going to take you out of Egypt, don't worry about it. Then you're going to know that I am God. You're going to know who I really am. What type of an answer is that? But Torah Ohr, Musbar, in the book Torah Ohr, which is a book which is written, compiled speeches of the first Rebbe of Chabad, the one who wrote the Tanya, Torah Ohr, Musbar, it's explained, Shabbat Matan Torah, that when the Torah was given, Hidgaleh Hashem Havaya, was revealed the name of God, which is Yud, and then afterwards Hey, and then Vav, and then Hey. Shalom Hidgaleh Lavot. This was a name of God that was not revealed to the fathers. Okadeshi Yev Shari. The only way that there could have been this revelation, the Yadatem, that everyone will know what God really is. Hayahechrach, there had to be Galus Mitzrayim, there had to be exile in Egypt. Bahari Otam La'amazeh, and the Jewish people had to suffer. Whom Masik Sham, and the Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, concludes over there in this book Torah Ohr, Shezeh Gam Atam La'richat HaGalut Achron, why we have been in 2,000 years of exile since the temple has been destroyed. This is also a preparation for something higher, the revelation of God, which will be La'atid, in the future. Revelation of God. That's the name of the of the story, the name of the game. That's the story. In the beginning, when God created the world, God was revealed here. When God gave the Torah, He was revealed here. When the temple was here, He was revealed here. And now God is concealed here. And the reason for this concealment is in order to have an even greater revelation than there was when the Torah was given or when God created the world and He was here, something even greater.
Wasn't the question, why are we suffering for so long?
Right, that's the question. So the answer is, then the answer is the only way that you can get this great revelation of God is by the suffering. I mean, it's not, in a way, it's not really that hard to understand. You know, you have a person, if he wants to be, let's say, great in sports, so he has to really, really practice and really suffer. Right? You see these people doing runs in the morning. They do runs, they're suffering. You see how they're puffing and puffing. It's for their health or for this. You see, they look like in agony. They're in agony. In other words, in order to a person who just wants pleasure all the time, so that person is never really going to succeed in anything. But he'll succeed in having a good time, you know, if that's the purpose of life. But in order to achieve anything, there has to be a certain amount of discomfort. Here we're talking about the revelation of the essence of God. There has to be this discomfort. Okay, now we, of course, you know, I for one will say, who says it's worth it? That essentially was Moses' question. That was Moshe's question to God. Good, I understand, God, you're good, you're okay, and everything you do is right. But Moshe said, frankly, I think you've just overdone it. The Jewish people are just really suffering, and there's no reason why they suffered, and there's no possible explanation of what they're going to get from it. So God said to Moshe, there's going to be something new. There's going to be something new that you never dreamed of this. There's going to be a revelation of me on Mount Sinai. And it can only come by means of this suffering. Is it worth it? I don't know. According to God, he said it was worth it. Mm-hmm. The Lubavitcher Rebbe said before he was 3 years old, the Rebbe, he wrote that before he was 3 years old, he was already so troubled by the suffering of the Jewish people, and that it was already woven in his mind. He wrote a letter to at that time, the president of Israel, Ben Tzvi. He said, before I went to Cheder, he said, before I was 3 years old, I already had it in my mind that the Mashiach will come and he'll explain all the suffering, make sense of all the suffering that the Jews have ever suffered. He wrote a letter to this president of Israel, and he said, I'm sorry, I can't call you president. In Hebrew, the word for president is nasi, a nasi. And a nasi is also another name for, in a big way, for the leader of the Jewish people. The ultimate nasi will be the Mashiach. He will be the leader of all the Jewish people and lead them in a proper direction. So the Rebbe wrote a letter to this president of Israel and says, excuse me that I cannot address you by your proper title of nasi, but since I was young, before I was 3 years old, I already had it in my mind that the nasi is the Mashiach, and he's going to explain and make sense of all of the suffering of all the Jewish people. Right? How that's going to be, who knows? But that's the way it'll be. Yud Beis. Kol inyan shebetorah, everything which is in the Torah, hu emiti, it is true and eternal. Mikach, moving from this, it is understood, shekushya betorah, that this question of the Torah, gam sheish lav taretz, even if there is an answer to it, mash'ira b'chol zot makom l'kushya, nevertheless the question, the Torah is eternal, the questions of the Torah are also eternal. Kaderach she'omer pam, like the previous Rebbe, Kabbalah Krush Morichami, like my father-in-law, the father-in-law of the Rebbe, in it for bringing shel shvuot biyachas l'kushya mofia b'Torah Chassidut, that there is a question which is found in the books of Chassidut, al kach shelo nikva simchat Torah b'chag b'Shavuos. Why is it that simchat Torah is not in the holiday of Shavuot? What's simchat Torah? Simchat Torah comes at the end of the holiday of Sukkot, and it's like 6 months later, on the other half of the year, the other side of the year, than the holiday of Shavuot. The holiday of Shavuot is 50 days after Pesach. The holiday is after Pesach. Let me turn this down here. Excuse me. I just always forget to turn it back on again. So we said that, so some people, this is a question. There's the holiday of Simchat Torah. Why is the holiday of Simcha, being happy with the Torah, celebrated, 5-6 months after the giving of the Torah? Right? The giving of the Torah was given in Sivan, and Simchat Torah is given, whatever it is, Simchat Torah we're celebrating it like 4 or 5 months later. Why? So he said, Zman man Toratenu. Because there's a question and it's found in the Torah, so even though that there's a good answer to this question, there's a lot of good answers to the question, but nevertheless, the question is still an eternal question. Maybe it should be in the holiday of Shavuot. Maybe it should be. Afkan also here, they're saying the question remains. Since the question, why did you make these Jewish people suffer, is written in the Torah, Harigam la'achar, even after God gave the answer, is in order to make the revelation of Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. Nevertheless, the question still remains, why, God, do you make the Jewish people suffer? Why? Behetan lakach, echad mi'atamim, one reason is, av ki yesh tzarich l'shibud galus, even though that it is necessary for the Jewish people to be in exile. Kahachan, as a preparation for the future, b'chol zot, nevertheless, efshari tarya hachlafu Shibud ruchni. Why does it have to be physical pain? The Jewish people, there's people dying, people are sick, people are suffering. Jews, why should it be that way? We could change it for some sort of spiritual, right? People one day they wouldn't have any answers to, they wouldn't understand the Gemara. No one in Israel would understand the Gemara, right? For one full year. Terrible, torturous thing. Everybody would learn, no one would understand, everybody would give wrong answers, right? All the shuls, the synagogues, everybody would be all confused. Oh, that's what there should be. Instead of having exile and intermarriage and these crazy things that are going on, Jews go off into cults.
Why couldn't...
if they have to suffer, let them suffer spiritually. What?
Why couldn't it be a world where you're rewarded in this world for your mitzvahs, and when you get enough mitzvahs, we have this great revelation? Why does that have to be through pain?
Okay, for whatever reason it does, you have to have an effort, right? There has to be effort made in order to get paid for it.
This question was coming back, but still, so why?
Right, good, okay, good. I accept your answer. Yes, why not? That's right. It would be, people would have to work hard spiritually. Therefore, Shema 14 b'Torah, or it says in Torah, or Pirtei Shibud Shel Chayim. It explains over there that what does it mean that Paro made bitter their life, ba'avoda kasha, with hard work, b'chomer el bilovenim, in concrete and in bricks, b'kol avoda basara, all the work they did in the field, it could all be translated spiritually. Vayamoru at chayim, and that they made their lives bitter. This is the Torah. That our life is the Torah, and the Torah became bitter. But avodah kasha, what does it mean? Avodah kasha, the kushya. We have a lot of questions in the Torah. Chomer, this is called a chomer, to learn all the different methods of learning the Torah. That's where we should have our difficulties. The call avodah b'sadeh. Da brisa, this is the brisa, levanim, this is libun hilchata, this is learning the laws. Look over there, it explains very well. Just like the union of galus simply is, we could transform it, we could exchange it. Instead of having physical pain and physical difficulties, it could be spiritual. We just don't understand the Torah. We have to work hard at the Torah. Kach gam yagia b'tirdas parnasa. The same thing is also making a livelihood. This is the main thing of galus. Instead of people, their businesses closing down, people going bankrupt, people not having money, people suing each other, instead of that, it could be all exchanged for learning Torah, having difficulty in the Torah. A person suddenly getting an answer in the Torah and it's wrong and everybody makes fun of him, right? That's a stupid answer, a terrible answer. That's in place of him getting put into debtor's prison. Or Ikran shel tirdas aparnasa, the main thing of having difficulty in making a living is rabus machshavas. The main difficulty in making a living is how a person interprets it. Ad kedei, and so much, a person just simply doesn't know what to do. Sometimes it can be that a person has monetary problems and he just doesn't know what to do. I know people that they borrow money from what's called the underworld. They need money and they give them money with a smile and ready money, right, in an instant. And if you pay back on time, there's not very much interest. You have to pay more than the bank. You have to pay. So he needs like $100,000 in his business. So he borrows and they say, listen, you pay back in 2 months and all you have to do is pay, 5% interest. Right? So that's pretty good, not bad, $5,000. Says, but it's compounded every month. You don't pay back. So 2 months he figures, I'll just wait a little while, and then comes another month, and then another month, and all of a sudden he finds out that he owes $200,000, and then he owes $400,000. Then what happened, right? And these people, if you don't pay them, they'll, yeah. So the people get into terrible problems. They have to run away. They run away from their family. They're running away their whole life. Why can't we exchange this with working at Torah? Adam Yamov Yagab Torah. He can work in Torah until She Tit Orana Etzlo Svora Lakan Svora Lakan. All of a sudden he gets an idea over here and another idea over there, and he doesn't know how to. That should be his problem. His problem that he doesn't know how to explain the ideas of the Torah. The Lubavitcher Rebbe once said that it was very, very hard. The worst day in the day of the week was Shabbos. In the days of the weekdays, whenever he had all sudden thoughts poured into his mind of Torah, he was a genius. He knew everything. He could write it down. He could write it down. But on Shabbos he couldn't write. So for him it was torture. He would get all these ideas, wonderful genius ideas, but he couldn't write it down, so he wouldn't be able to remember them. He wouldn't know if he would remember them. Like it's told that once also the Mittler Rebbe once was saying Torah, and there was total silence in the room. And nevertheless he kept saying, shh, keep quiet, keep quiet, keep quiet. No one was talking. The Rebbe Rashab explained that why, because he had so much new ideas coming into his mind that he had to tell them to keep quiet. Said the Rebbe, that should be our torture. That should be our torture. That should be our difficulties. That should be our lichora, the shem matzorich. If so, why did the Rebbe have to stop this flow of ideas? Is it, like we said a lot of times, that when a person has a lot of flow of ideas, sometimes it's very difficult to come to a conclusion. So therefore, and not only that, if a person stops for a moment, sometimes he can get a deeper idea. So therefore, this, for some people, if they have tremendous flows of ideas in Torah, it's a torture for them. Right? They have so many ideas coming into their mind, they have no one to talk to, or they have no one to. It's a torture. That, says the Rebbe, that should be our torture. We should get. Nevertheless, the question still remains: why is it that the Jewish people have to actually suffer physically? So the answer is because the revelation of godliness has to be in the physical world. If our suffering was only in Torah, so then the revelation of godliness would be in our minds. But here God wants that the revelation should be actually in the world, that the world should actually change. In order to accomplish that, as we have to work with our bodies in the time of exile. The physical body actually has to undergo a refinement. So let me just read the last paragraph here. Because a person has to change his nature and transform his nature, this is hinted at with the idea of the market of donkeys. It used to be that at the time of the Talmud that you would have a donkey, you would rent a donkey for the amount of distance you were going to go. So if you wanted to go 100 miles, it would cost, let's say, $100. If you wanted to go 101 miles, it would cost $200. Why? Because donkeys were used to going 100 miles. And to change its nature was almost an impossible thing. It was as much effort as going the first 100. So also, we're now in exile in order to change our natures. So it's spiritual, also the same thing. By means of our being in exile, physical, and having to change our natures in order to devote ourselves to Hashem, is this changing of the nature is worth more than all of the normal sacrifices in the Holy Temple and the difficult things of learning Torah, changing our nature totally. And this is what's going to bring about that God also will, so to speak, change all of nature. And there'll be a revelation in the world even greater than it was when the Jews left Egypt.
Thank you.
All right, Dan should be here right now. Let me